Have you ever convinced yourself that walking away was the only choice, only to question everything later? That was me with Lily. She was adventurous, free-spirited, and in my mind, completely reckless. But what if I told you it wasn't her that was the problem? It was me? I used to think I had everything figured out. My life was on track. I had a good job, a steady paycheck, and a future that felt safe, stable. I had no reason to question it. Then came Lily. She walked into my life with a kind of energy that I couldn't ignore, always talking about new places, new experiences, and this passion for living outside the lines. At first, I admired it. I even thought it was exciting. But the more she talked about her dreams, about backpacking through Europe or spending 6 months in a remote village in South America, the more I felt this knot in my stomach. At first, I tried to ignore it. I was happy with my life. I liked the quiet, the security. I thought, that's just who she is. It's not a big deal. But slowly, I started to see it differently. It wasn't just her dreams that bothered me. It was what they represented. They were a reminder of everything I wasn't doing, everything I wasn't willing to risk. She was out there, chasing the world, while I was here, building a life that felt too small. She wanted change, adventure, risk. I wanted stability, control, and a future that didn't feel like it could fall apart at any moment. And in my mind, those two things couldn't coexist. I started to think that maybe we weren't meant for the same path. It was an uncomfortable feeling, but I convinced myself it was for the best. She deserved someone who could keep up with her, someone who wasn't afraid of taking risks. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I was letting her go for her own good, for the future we would never share. When I said those words to her, I thought I was doing the responsible thing. But I didn't feel free. I felt empty. And for the first time, I started questioning whether I had made the right decision. Months later, when the postcard arrived, I realized I had been running from something far bigger than just her dream of travel. I was running from my own fears. I always thought life was about finding balance. At least, that's what I told myself. I wasn't one for wild dreams or unpredictability. I was the guy who liked routine, who knew where he was going and how to get there. My job was stable, I had a house, and I didn't worry about bills. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Then Lily came into my life. She wasn't like anyone I had ever met. She was always looking for the next adventure, the next place to explore, and it was contagious. For a while, I let myself get swept up in it. I started thinking, maybe I'm missing out on something. Maybe she's right. There's more to life than just security. We'd talk about the places she wanted to go, the experiences she wanted to have, and for a moment, I thought maybe I could step outside of my comfort zone. I even booked a weekend getaway once, something spontaneous, just to see what it felt like. But deep down, I always went back to what I knew. Stability, safety, that was my anchor. The idea of packing up everything and chasing a dream that didn't have a clear, predictable end, that terrified me. Lily's life was full of unknowns, and I couldn't handle that. I wanted control. I wanted a future where I didn't have to worry every time the stock market dropped or when the next bill was due. I worked hard for what I had, and I wasn't willing to risk it all for a pipe dream. Lily, on the other hand, couldn't understand it. She didn't want a predictable life. She wanted the world. She wanted to live freely, and that scared me. The more I saw her talk about the places she wanted to go, the more I realized how different we were. The more I started to feel like I was being left behind in a life I didn't want to be in anymore. I thought I could find happiness in stability, but the more I looked at Lily, the more it felt like I was stuck in a cage. She had the courage to chase her dreams, while I was frozen by my own fears. I kept asking myself, is this really the life I want? Or am I just too scared to break free? But I told myself, I wasn't scared. I wasn't running from anything. I was just making the right choice, the responsible choice. The problem was, I didn't know what it meant to truly live, to take risks and feel alive. I didn't know what it meant to chase a dream that was bigger than security. And that, in the end, is what made everything so hard to see clearly. The more I thought about it, the more it started to eat away at me. The way Lily talked about her plans, her trips, her experiences, it all seemed so far removed from the life I had worked so hard to build. I found myself resenting her for it, even though I knew deep down that wasn't fair. It wasn't her fault she had the courage to chase what she wanted. It was mine for staying behind. She'd tell me stories about people she met while traveling, people who lived without a care in the world, with nothing more than a backpack and a dream. I'd nod along, pretending to be happy for her, but inside, I felt this growing pit in my stomach. Every time she mentioned a new destination or a new adventure, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her. I started to question everything. Was she trying to pull me into this chaotic, unpredictable world? Or was she just outgrowing me? We started having more arguments. Little things at first. Her leaving the dishes in the sink while she was out planning her next trip. Her excitement over new places we couldn't afford to visit. But it wasn't about the dishes or the money. It was about the growing distance between us. She'd come home from a trip, eyes bright with excitement, talking about all the new things she saw, and I'd find myself getting irritated. Why do you have to be so reckless, I'd think. Why can't you just be happy with what we have here? I wanted stability, but it felt like she wanted to break free, and the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being held back. I began to resent her for making me question my own life choices. I told myself that I was just being practical, but in truth, I was scared. I was scared of what would happen if I let go of control, scared that I might end up like one of those people she admired, lost, directionless, and without a plan. I started seeing every conversation through the lens of this growing suspicion. Every time she mentioned a new destination, it felt like she was pushing me to join her. And the more she did, the more I pulled away. I thought if I just shut down, if I played the responsible one, maybe I could keep things together. Maybe I could convince myself that it wasn't her. I wasn't the problem. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was scared. Scared of losing my grip on the life I'd spent so long building. And I was scared of failing if I let go of that stability. So, I began to build this wall between us. The more I built, the more we drifted apart. I told myself it was her, that she wasn't serious, that her dreams were too big for me. But what I couldn't admit to myself, what I wasn't ready to face, was that it wasn't her dreams that scared me. It was my own. The day I told her it was over, I remember feeling like I was making the most difficult decision of my life, and at the same time, like it was the only choice I had. We were sitting on the couch in the apartment we'd shared for the last 2 years, and I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head. I knew what I had to say. I knew it was the right thing. But that didn't make it any easier. "Lily, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling even though I was trying to keep it steady. She looked at me, confused, a little concerned. "David, what's going on? You're scaring me," she said. I hated hearing that. I hated knowing that I was about to hurt her. I took a deep breath and forced the words out. I think, I think we're not on the same path anymore. You want to keep running after dreams, but I need something more stable, something secure. I can't keep living like this." Her eyes widened in shock, and I saw the pain flash across her face before she quickly masked it with confusion. "What are you talking about, David? We're fine. We're happy." But we weren't fine. Not really. I could feel the tension in every conversation, every moment we spent together. And as much as I wanted to hold on to her, I knew that my fear of change was too strong to ignore. "I'm not saying I don't care about you," I told her, trying to make it sound softer, like I wasn't completely breaking her heart. "But we want different things, and I can't keep pretending like I'm okay with it." She stared at me for a long moment, like she was searching for something in my face, some clue that this was all just a bad joke. But it wasn't. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and I hated myself for doing this to her. "Is that it? Just like that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. "Yeah, I think it's for the best." And then just like that, I walked away. I left her standing there, devastated, while I tried to convince myself that I was doing the right thing, that it was better this way. I couldn't be the man she needed. I couldn't live the life she wanted me to. So I walked away from the only woman I ever truly loved, thinking it was for the best. But deep down, I felt nothing but emptiness. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, I realized something. I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. In the weeks that followed, I tried to tell myself I was fine. I kept busy with work, spent extra hours at the gym, tried to distract myself with anything that would keep my mind off Lily. But it didn't work. I'd be sitting at my desk, and suddenly, I'd remember how she used to leave little notes around the apartment, random thoughts she'd write down, things that made me smile, or how we'd sit in the kitchen on a lazy Sunday morning, planning our next trip, talking about all the places we still wanted to visit. Those little moments started to haunt me. At first, I couldn't admit to myself how much I missed her, how much I regretted walking away. I was supposed to be the one with it all figured out, the one who made the smart decision, the practical one. But all I felt was loneliness. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and reach for her side of the bed, only to find it cold. I'd catch myself dialing her number, only to stop short before I hit call. What was I going to say? I had made my decision, right? I couldn't just undo it. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to see things differently. I started asking myself questions I hadn't been brave enough to ask before. What was I really afraid of? Was it her, or was it the idea of losing the safety I had built around myself? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I hadn't broken up with her because of her dreams or because she was too wild. I had broken up with her because I was scared. Scared of change, scared of taking risks, scared of stepping into the unknown. I was scared that if I let go of control, I'd lose everything. And here I was, alone, realizing that by holding on to that control, I had already lost the one person who made me feel alive. The one person who had made me realize that maybe life wasn't about staying comfortable. Maybe it was about stepping into the unknown with someone by your side, not because it was safe, but because it was worth it. But it was too late. I had made my choice, and Lily had moved on. I could feel it. The gap between us was too wide now. She was living her life, chasing the dreams I couldn't keep up with. And I was here, stuck in a life that felt more like a cage than ever before. It was my own fault. I had pushed her away, convinced myself that what she wanted wasn't what I needed. But now, looking back, I saw it for what it really was. I wasn't just scared of her dreams. I was scared of my own. It was almost 3 months after the breakup when I found it. The postcard. It arrived on a random Tuesday, tucked into the pile of bills and junk mail. The picture on the front was of a sunset over a sandy beach, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. I didn't even need to flip it over to know who it was from. I could already feel the weight of it in my hands, the memories rushing back in waves. I stared at it for a long time before I finally turned it over. There, in her familiar handwriting, was a simple message. Life's been amazing. I've been to 3 new countries in the last month. There's something about letting go of everything you know that makes you see the world in a way you never thought possible. Wish you were here to see it with me. Take care, David. Lily. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. There she was, out in the world, living the life I had convinced myself was too risky, too unstable. She was doing exactly what I had told her to give up, and she was thriving. I hadn't just lost her, I had lost the chance to be a part of something bigger than myself. I had closed myself off to everything she had offered, all because I was too afraid to take a leap of faith. I sat there for what felt like hours, holding that postcard, the weight of my regret settling deep in my chest. In the months since we broke up, I had tried to distract myself, tried to convince myself that she wasn't the right person for me, but here it was, in black and white, a reminder that it wasn't her dreams that scared me. It was my own fears. She had let go. She had stepped into the unknown. And in the process, she had found her place in the world. And me? I was stuck. I had held onto everything I thought I needed. Stability, comfort, control. And now, I had nothing but an empty apartment and a life that felt smaller with each passing day. I thought about reaching out, writing her back, but I stopped myself. What could I say? Hey, I messed up. I've been holding onto the wrong things, and now I see how much I was holding you back. Would she even care? Would she want to hear from me after everything I'd said? After everything I'd done? I couldn't change the past, but what if I could change my future? That postcard stayed on my kitchen counter for weeks. Every time I passed it, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. It was like a mirror, reflecting everything I had been too scared to face. My own insecurities, my fear of change, and my unwillingness to step out of my comfort zone. The more I looked at it, the more I realized something. I wasn't just losing Lily, I was losing myself. I had spent so long holding on to what felt safe, convinced that I was doing the responsible thing, the smart thing. But now, I could see it. I had been holding on to a life that wasn't even mine. It was the life I thought I should want, the life I was supposed to want. But Lily had shown me something different. She had shown me that living wasn't about playing it safe. It wasn't about staying in the same place, doing the same thing, day in and day out. It was about growth, about pushing yourself to do things that scared you, to step into the unknown and trust that you could handle whatever came next. And I realized, for the first time, that I was capable of more than I thought, more than I had ever let myself believe. I wasn't the same person I had been when we first met. I wasn't the same person I had been when I made the decision to walk away. The person who made that choice was afraid of change, afraid of taking risks, afraid of losing control. But the person I had become over the last few months was someone who wanted more, someone who was ready to take a chance. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew I couldn't just call her up and expect everything to go back to the way it was. But I also knew that if I didn't do something, I would regret it for the rest of my life. So I made a decision. I decided to stop living in fear. I decided to take a leap of faith, not just in love, but in myself. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew it was the only way to find out. The first step was simple. I booked a flight. Not to some faraway destination like Lilywood, but to a small town just a few hours away. A place where I could breathe, think, and really take a look at the life I wanted to build for myself. A place where I could figure out what truly mattered. I didn't know if it was too late to find her again, to show her that I had changed, that I was ready to be the kind of person who could keep up with her dreams. But I had to try. I had to make the choice to step out of my comfort zone, to stop pretending I had everything figured out, and to start living the life I was meant to live. A month passed since I made that decision, and it wasn't an easy month. It wasn't some dramatic transformation where everything fell into place. No, it was more like putting one foot in front of the other when you're not sure where the road is headed. I spent time reflecting, focusing on myself, learning to be comfortable with the uncertainty. I didn't rush into anything, no relationships, no new distractions. Just me figuring out who I really was without the safety net of a predictable life. Then, one afternoon, about 4 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a cafe in that small town, nursing a cup of coffee and watching the world go by. I had come here with the intention of clearing my head. Maybe write a little, but mostly, I just wanted to think, to breathe. And then, just as I was zoning out, I saw her, Lily. She was walking past the cafe, looking down at her phone, like she was trying to figure out where to go next. She had this air about her, like she was just as lost as I had been, but in the best way possible. There was something about her, something that made everything else around me seem to fade into the background. At first, I thought I might be imagining it. I had no idea she'd be here. Why would she be here? But there she was. I stood up quickly, almost knocking my chair over in the process. My heart was racing. Was I ready for this? Was this a sign, or just some random coincidence? Was she even open to seeing me again? Before I could talk myself out of it, I walked out of the cafe. "Lily," I called, unsure of what I'd say next. She stopped and turned. Her eyes widened, and for a second, I thought she might turn and walk away. But she didn't. She just stood there, looking at me. Her face softened, like she didn't know whether to smile or be angry. "David," she said, her voice filled with surprise and something else. I couldn't quite place it. I didn't expect to see you here," I said, feeling a bit foolish. I've been thinking about a lot of things. About us. About everything." She didn't say anything for a moment. She just looked at me, her gaze searching, as if she was deciding whether or not to let me in. "I'm surprised to see you," she said finally, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I thought you were off living the stable life you always talked about." I chuckled nervously, suddenly aware of how much had changed in me. "Yeah, well, turns out I needed a little more uncertainty in my life, and maybe a little more of the things I was running from." She tilted her head, studying me. "And what exactly is it that you were running from?" I took a deep breath. I was running from the unknown, from the things that scared me, from you, honestly. I thought I had everything figured out, but I didn't. I didn't know what I wanted until I lost it. For a long moment, Lily didn't respond. She just looked at me, her eyes not filled with anger or bitterness, but something else. Something that made me feel like there was still a possibility here, even after everything. Finally, she nodded. "I think I get it," she said softly, "but it's going to take more than a coffee shop meeting for me to believe you've really changed." I didn't expect it to be that easy. I knew it wasn't, but I was okay with that. The fact that she didn't turn away from me, the fact that we were standing here, talking like this, it felt like a second chance, a chance I was willing to earn, step by step, no matter how long it took. "I'm willing to work for it," I said, looking her in the eyes, "if you'll give me that chance." She smiled, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. The next few months weren't easy, but they were exactly what I needed. Lily and I didn't rush back into anything. After that initial, somewhat awkward reunion, we started talking. A lot. We met up for coffee, for walks in the park, and even just to sit and listen to music together. But this time, it wasn't like before. We weren't rushing into a relationship again. Instead, we were rebuilding the trust that had been broken, piece by piece. I had a lot of work to do on myself. I couldn't just say the right words and expect things to go back to normal. I needed to show her that I had truly changed, that I was ready to embrace the unknown, not just as a concept, but in my life. The fear I had been running from wasn't something I could just ignore anymore. It was a part of who I was, but it didn't have to control me. We didn't talk about our past relationship much at first. It was too raw, too painful. But eventually, I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't before. I told her about the doubts I'd always carried with me, the fears of failing, of not being good enough, of losing control. I told her how I had pushed her away because I wasn't ready to confront those things in myself. And slowly, bit by bit, I saw her start to soften. She didn't ask for the apology. She didn't demand it. But it was the only way for me to begin healing, not just with her, but with myself. Lily, for her part, had changed too. She was still the adventurous, driven woman I remembered, but she had grown as well. She had chased her dreams without hesitation, built the life she wanted without waiting for anyone's approval. She showed me what it meant to live fully, to take risks even when you're scared, and to never apologize for wanting more. But she had also learned to be more patient, more understanding of the complexities of people's emotions and fears. We started small, little things like talking about our dreams without judgment, without fear of one person holding the other back. We shared hopes for the future, not just individually, but together. It wasn't about fixing what was broken, but about creating something new, something stronger. I was no longer afraid of her dreams, and she wasn't afraid of mine. We were beginning to see that love didn't mean sacrificing your passions for the sake of the other. It meant supporting each other while still holding on to the parts of you that make you who you are. Love wasn't about control or comfort, it was about growth, mutual growth. One evening, after we had spent the day at the beach, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Lily turned to me. "I think I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, but full of emotion. I raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" "To give this a real shot," she said with a soft smile, "to see where it can go, if you're still willing." I didn't need to think twice. "I'm willing," I said, my voice full of conviction. More than anything. It wasn't some grand, dramatic moment. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was real. It was honest. And it was enough. The road ahead wasn't going to be perfect, and I wasn't going to pretend I had everything figured out. But now, for the first time, I knew that whatever came next, I was ready to face it. With her, together.